Imagine getting up every day full of energy as if you were in your 20s again. What would that be like? What would it be worth to you? What is your health worth to you? Think about it. Your health isn't everything, but without it, everything else is nothing. And yet, too many of us are taking it for granted until something goes wrong. And no one wakes up hoping to be diagnosed with a disease or chronic illness. And yet, we've never been taught how to be proactive in our health through our school or public health. As a registered health coach and integrative health practitioner, I believe it's time this information is made available to everyone. Combining new knowledge around your health and the ability to do my functional medicine lab tests in the comfort of your own home will allow you to optimize your health for today and all your tomorrows. Don't wait for your wake-up call. Welcome back to another episode of the Don't Wait for Your Wake-Up Call podcast. And this is not just another episode. This is actually episode 200. And I'm super proud to have come this far with my podcast that I'm actually at episode 200. And so today we're going to do something really special. So I've invited Ashleigh Hanson, who is the amazing podcaster extraordinaire who edits and produces my podcasts for me. And without her, I wouldn't have a podcast. I love recording them. And then I love just going, Ashleigh, here you go. And she does all the rest. And it's like magic. So thank you, Ashleigh, for coming and being part of this episode number 200. I'm so happy to have you here with me.
Melissa, I'm so honored to be here. It's been such a fun journey getting to work on your podcast over, little over 2 years of getting to see your journey on this. So I'm really honored to be here.
Well, thank you. And what we're going to do today is flip this around, and Ashleigh's actually going to be interviewing me about something that's really near and dear to my heart that I haven't shared very much of in this podcast at all. And now we're going to, starting here. And that is Girls Matter. And with that, I'm going to let Ashleigh run the show today.
Yeah, it's such an interesting facet. Like you said, it's not something you share as often, so it's interesting to tap into this place. And I'm just curious of how you got connected with Girls Matter and what Girls Matter is.
So Girls Matter is a nonprofit that I co-founded back in the end of 2016 to keep girls in school. We started out in Uganda. We've since expanded into Kenya, and we want to keep growing. And the reason behind keeping girls in school started even further back. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, which started in about 2013. And I'm a Girl Guide leader, and in the US, that's Girl Scouts. And I have been ever since my oldest daughter, who's now 26, was 5 years old. And back in 2013, I took the girls to see a documentary on International Day of the Woman. And that documentary was called Girls Rising. And that documentary was about girls who were being denied the right to go to school and have an education simply because they were a girl. And I've had the great fortune of traveling throughout my entire life, and I've traveled to third world countries, and I'm aware of living conditions. I'm aware of the inequity in the world. However, having this put in my face in a single documentary with about 13 girls sharing their powerful stories of how much they wanted an education and were being denied it, just had me sitting there with tears literally running down my face. Because it was so unfair. And I believe that education should be a right and not a privilege. And I'm sitting in that room of 20 plus girls, my own 2 daughters included, realizing that every single one of us in the Western world had at some point taken our education for granted. At some point, we'd complained about having to go to school. At some point, we'd faked illness so we didn't have to go to school.
Mhm.
And yet here were these girls desperate for an education.
Yeah.
And I knew right then, right there, that I needed to do something about this. And I had no idea what that would be or how I would do that. I just felt that calling and I put it in the back of my head to mull it over. And I was in the corporate world back then. And it's not like I had any extra time on my hands to go out and do something immediately with it. And I had no idea what it was that I was going to do. However, it was there in the back of my mind. And when I got let go from the corporate world a few years later, one of the things that came out loud and clear for me, because then I also had no idea what I was going to do. I'd been in this career for 24 years and given an hour to clear out my desk and no word of thanks. And I'm like, now what? I don't know. I was open to being guided. And I knew that it had to be more of service to the humanity and the planet. For the last 2 years in that corporate role, I had been feeling unfulfilled ever since I'd watched that documentary.
Mhm.
So now I had a chance. Now I had time. Now I had a chance to do something differently. And I still didn't know the how.
Right.
I knew the why. And as I started on this path of what am I doing next with my life, I started attending conferences and getting into personal growth and personal development. And I attended a conference where the speaker said, all humans are put on this planet to do three things: to find your passion and your purpose, to never stop learning, and to be of service. And that resonated really deeply with me.
Mhm.
And then he said, and you don't have to know how, you just have to know your why.
Mhm.
And I went, I know my why. And I have no idea how. However, I've just realized listening to you that I need to get it out of the back of my head and I need to speak it to the world.
Yeah.
Because when I start talking about this, I'm putting it out to the universe, and then those resources can come back to me.
Mhm.
And so I left that conference and I called the only two people that I knew that had started a nonprofit in British Columbia, Canada. And I called them up and I said, can you teach me how to start a nonprofit? You've done it. I haven't. Can you show me how so that I can get this off the ground? They're like,
Yeah.
what do you want to do? I said, I want to keep girls in school and educate them. And I explained why. And the why of that is so critical because what I learned in that documentary was a stat that just, again, hit me to the core. That if India could educate just 1% more of its girls, it could raise its GDP by $5.5 billion. And to me, I was like, that's the answer to bring these
Mhm.
countries out of poverty, is educate the other half of the population.
Yeah.
And then they can have a career and we grow the GDP and the country comes out of poverty.
Mhm.
How powerful is that? It's so simple and yet it's not easy.
Mm. Yeah.
There's cultural, religious barriers, monetary barriers. However, we have to start somewhere.
Mhm.
And that's only one reason to educate the girls. When we educate the girls, we're also preventing teenage marriages.
Mm.
And the number one cause of death in girls aged 15 to 19 globally is childbirth
Mm.
because their bodies aren't ready to be giving birth when they're still teenagers. And yet, when they're married off early as teenagers, that's what happens.
Mhm.
And the reason they get married off early is when families can no longer afford them. And
Right.
we still have large families in many third world countries around the world where education is not free. Elementary education is free, but once it's beyond elementary, it's not free.
Hmm.
And so families are barely having enough money to feed their family. They don't have enough money to send them away to high school. And sometimes at that point, they don't even have enough money to feed them. And so they marry them off because then they become someone else's problem. It's someone else's responsibility to feed them. In that documentary, there was actually a little girl who was married off at 5 years old
Oh,
to a man in his 50s. She became his slave, cooking and cleaning for him at 5 years old.
yeah. Just things we don't ever touch or think about here. And like you said, taking so much of that for granted and how much the education system is a preventer to those things.
Exactly. Because it's amazing what education can do in terms of empowering a girl to
Hmm.
stand up, to speak her mind, and fight back, fight for
Yeah.
herself.
Hmm.
There's a book called Half the Sky, and I actually only read it this year, and it's a beautiful book. And it's called Half the Sky because women should hold up half the sky, and yet we're not.
Mm.
And this book highlights again the stories of different women around the world, from Southeast Asia to India to Africa, who, because of where they're born, the families they're born into, they are coming from very difficult circumstances. You know, the book starts out in brothels in Southeast Asia,
Mm.
where the girls at a certain age are just sent to go earn their money and by working in a brothel.
Hmm.
And it's women that run the brothels. And you would think, how can a woman do this to another girl? And the problem is when education isn't there, they accept it as their lot in life.
Yeah.
And those women had to work in the brothel as young girls, and now they've worked out their way up to now be the mama of the brothel. And
Right.
all they know is to treat those girls badly because that's how they were treated.
Hmm.
And it's not until a girl has an education that she feels powerful enough to speak up, to refuse, to fight back.
Yeah.
And to a story of a woman in India who was the only girl in her village to have an education. And she fought back against the gangsters
Hmm.
of the village because she had the wherewithal and the smarts to be able to outsmart them because she had an education. So these are all beautiful stories of women rising up. As hard as
Hmm.
it is to read, it's women rising up
Yeah.
while giving you an insight into what happens in our world today.
Yeah.
This isn't from 150 years ago. This
No.
is this century. This is happening in parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so that's why we started Girls Matter,
Mm.
because girls do matter. And I've been asked that question. Why did you name it Girls Matter? Of course,
Mm.
girls matter. I said, yeah, in the first world, but not necessarily in developing countries.
Yeah.
And we want people to know that girls matter everywhere.
Yeah.
And so my co founders said, we want to do this with you. This is awesome. And so again, the universe was just giving me these resources because I never expected that. I was just asking them to show me how to get started. And now all of a sudden, because they said, we want to do this with you, they said, let's piggyback Girls Matter on the nonprofit that they already had called Meaningful Megan. And what they already had was they had started preschools in the village of Buyaya, Uganda, and then also in an area in Nepal. And the reason for the preschools was that, again, the elementary schools in these countries are so overcrowded that often kids will start in elementary school. And if they can't keep up, there's no support. There's no extra teaching assistants in the classroom, et cetera, to take those kids aside that are struggling to learn to read or struggling with their numbers to give them extra support. There's no tutoring. And so they just fall further and further behind, and they finish elementary school and they're still illiterate. They've literally fallen through the cracks. And so what Meaningful Megan has done is create preschools so that kids could start learning their numbers and their letters at a younger age, as they do in the rest of the world, so that they're better able to keep up throughout elementary school.
Yeah.
And so that's created amazing results. And as a result, they already had schoolrooms, they already had teaching staff. And so we were able to piggyback on what they'd already done by going into the same area. So we started in Buyaya, Uganda, working with their staff, because their staff knew all the girls in the village that had gone through the elementary school. And they knew the ones whose parents would support them in having a high school education. They just couldn't afford it. And so that made it really easy for us to literally launch the following month and start Girls Matter in January 2017. And today we still work with the same staff. They're wonderful, wonderful women, Mary and Esther. And we've had 4 girls now graduate from university. One of those is from vocational school. She's a seamstress. And we have many more girls going through high school. And we've expanded what we do as a result as well. We no longer just support girls in getting an education. We have expanded such that we're now loaning some of the girls who've completed their education funding in order to start their own business. And so Evelyn, who graduated as a seamstress, we loaned her money in order for her to be able to buy a sewing machine. Because once she finished school, she no longer had access to the sewing machines at school. So we loaned her the money so she could buy a sewing machine. And then as she repays those funds can then pay for another girl's education. And then what happened is Mary and Esther were letting us know that the girls in the village needed new clothing. And could we gather clothing and send it over? And of course, it would be easy in North America to gather clothing. The question is, how do we get it to them? The cost of shipping would be really prohibitive. And as we started researching it and looking into it, we found out that it probably would never get to the girls, even if it got to Uganda. Because unfortunately, what would likely happen is it would get to customs, and the customs officers would open it and see this North American clothing and take it and sell it themselves and pocket the money. So what we decided to do was instead send money over to Evelyn so she could buy fabric locally and make the dresses herself and earn an income in her brand new business. So we asked her to create some designs for the dresses she would make for the girls and send them over, and she did, and they were beautiful. And then we sent the money. We're sending it in installments because it takes time to make a lot of dresses, right? She's bought some fabric and she started making the dresses. And it's absolutely beautiful. The photos I'm now getting of the girls in their brand new dresses, they have a smile from ear to ear. And the reality is, this is the first time for many of them to have a brand new dress of their own. Imagine what that does for a girl's self-confidence.
Yeah.
Just to have a brand new dress. And for Evelyn, they're now walking advertisement for her business, because when other people see their dresses, they'll be like, oh, that's a beautiful dress. Where did you get the dress? Evelyn made it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a beautiful win-win-win that we've been able to create.
Yeah.
Another project that we worked on this year that was definitely not in our budget, however, was very needed. You can't have a school without a toilet. And they have a pit latrine system. So it's a squat toilet that goes down deep into a pit. And that toilet had been built, or that pit latrine had been built like 10 years ago. So the pit was now getting full. And then they had some flooding and it collapsed and it left a big hole in the ground, which is not hygienic. It's dangerous for young children and it's a real problem. So between Meaningful Megan and Girls Matter, we sent over funds so that they could build a new pit latrine system. And that was hard work. We got videos of the poor men with a big pitchfork starting to dig into the clay and dig down and down and down. First, it started kind of looking like a little bit of a coffin, and it went deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And then they laid some straw and wood over the top of that, and then they built bricks up and they built the building around it. And now they have a beautiful new pit latrine building with 3 stalls for the kids to use at the school so that the school could remain open. And this is for the preschool that's right in the village. And, all of the community uses that pit latrine building. So it's not just about helping the girls, it's about also helping the community where needed.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we can't do that without the support of the people on the ground, Mary and Esther. They're our guides. We don't sit here and think, oh, we know what you need and send it over or tell them what they need. We have them ask us for what they need and guide us so that we can make sure that we really are serving the needs of the community.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've been doing in Uganda. In Kenya, we work with an organization called the Jolly Sisters, Jali Sisters. And I was introduced to them through some networking that I do here in North America through its Leap for Ladies group that I'm part of. And the lady that organized that knew of the Jolly Sisters, and she connected me to them. Now, Jolly Sisters was created to support women from the slums in Kenya in learning how to create an income for themselves. Because if they can create an income for themselves, they're creating independence. So they teach them how to run a market stall. They teach them how to sew menstrual supplies, which is something that we also do with Girls Matter, is making sure the girls actually go to school every week of the month by having menstrual supplies, because it's not something they just go to the store and buy like we do here. They very often don't have anything, and therefore they stay home unless they have access to the reusable, washable menstrual supplies. So that was one of the things that the women of the Jolly Sisters could make and then sell. And beautiful African artwork that is then sold online, which again gives them access to the whole world. So I have some beautiful cards that they've created that you can use, and thank you cards and gift cards, etc. So Jolly Sisters was looking after the women, but there were still these women's daughters in the slums who weren't going to school. And so when I connected with them and they learned about Girls Matter, they said, can you help support the girls while we support the women? And from that, a beautiful partnership has formed. And that's what we do. So there's actually 18 girls that came to us through Jolly Sisters from the slums, many of whom tragically have been raped. And, these girls haven't had easy lives. Allowing them to go to school gives them safety. It gives them structure. It gives them some normalcy. And it gives them hope, because they know that with an education, they can move beyond their life in the slums. Right. And the power of giving a girl an education lasts forever, because an educated girl is more than twice as likely to ensure that her own children are educated.
Mm.
And so that generational ripple effect keeps going.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so I love what we're doing. I really love what
Yeah.
we're doing. And we continue to grow. We're partnering with a company called Euphoric, who has chosen Girls Matter as their charity. And Euphoric is, it has a, it's a health and wellness company with really powerful health and wellness products focusing on brain health, weight release, pain, and sleep, all of which all humans need to be addressing at some point, or most in terms
Hmm.
of the weight release right now in the world today, right? But the brain health we all want, the sleep we all want and need. And then there's times in our
Hmm.
life where we have pain, and being able to deal with that through some really powerful CBD products is uh, fabulous.
Hmm.
So we're really grateful for that partnership. And just getting this message out to the world is really important, because what I see people in third world countries who are more fulfilled and happier than people in our first world countries.
Hmm.
Because money doesn't buy happiness, things don't buy happiness. And they
No.
don't have a lot of money, they don't have a lot of things, but they have community, they have connection, and they support one another. Whereas in the first world, we tend to think we want more things and we need more money. And when we have more things, when we have more money, then we'll be happy.
Yeah.
And we live in our homes in isolation, especially after just having come through the last 4 years,
Hmm.
and we're not connected to our fellow humans, and we're not feeling fulfilled.
Hmm.
And there's a beautiful book by Lynn Twist that talked about that at the very beginning of the book. I can't remember the name. If you look up Lynn Twist, you'll find um, two of her books. And it's not the one about money, it's the other one. And she said that she was traveling in third world countries and meeting all of these people who had so much joy and so much love in their heart, and yet were surviving with so little. And they were literally in survival mode. And meanwhile, she had friends on, Fifth Avenue, New York, who had everything, but they weren't joyful.
Hmm.
And so she thought, what if I match them up and I have each of my friends sponsor a person over here that I've met? So there was 7 or 8 people in, I can't remember if it was Africa or India, and 7 or 8 people in New York, and she matched them all up. And it was a powerful transformation for them all, because the lives of the people in the third world, with the support of the financial support, got a little bit easier. And the lives of the
Mm.
people in New York became more fulfilling and joyful.
Yes.
Because it's when we give back that we can feel fulfilled. And so that's why I love sharing this message, is to anybody who's listening, how would you like to give back? Whether it's Girls Matter or something else, how would you like to give back?
Mm.
And notice, in giving back, in volunteering your time, in supporting other human beings, how that raises your frequency and raises your love and joy of life.
Hmm.
And I don't know, Ashleigh, how you feel about that.
Yeah, hearing everything you've just shared about Girls Matter and just girls in general around the world and what they're going through. I mean, I've had multiple times where goosebumps have come over my body to realize, like you said, the things that I've taken for granted as someone who grew up in Vancouver, BC. And like you said, I had every excuse under the book not to go to school and not realize how intertwined that is into my power as a woman now, and where I can use that for other people. So this has definitely brought up a lot of like, I want to help women too. And how can I get involved in Girls Matter? Because it's just, I didn't realize how connected stopping women from going to school how it has this greater impact on their communities at large and our world at large as a whole. It's really impactful.
It is. And that's why I share it, because so often, we're just all doing the best we can with the resources we have. And many of us are
Right.
very busy just, in our careers and raising our family and just trying to live life and get to the soccer games and the swim meets and all of these things. And we don't ever
Mm,
stop to think about anything outside of our bubble.
yeah.
And yet, if we do, it can have a profound positive impact on our own life. And even if that's
Hmm.
something as small as choosing to, instead of going to Starbucks or Tim Hortons 5 days a week, maybe going 3 days a week and the other 2 days a week donating to Girls Matter. Knowing that
Right.
your donation is going towards supporting a girl, whether it's for her menstrual supplies or paying for her
Hmm.
education or having extra funds in the Girls Matter account so we can do things like have Evelyn make dresses or build a new pit latrine as needed.
Right.
However you donate, those funds are going to good use. And we share our stories in our newsletter, and we don't fill your inbox with a newsletter every day. I try to send them out about once a quarter just to give you the updates of the stories of what we've been doing with the funding that you've donated. And if you have a little bit more to give and you would like to actually sponsor a girl, we would love to hear from you. And we work with you to choose the girl that you would like to sponsor so there's alignment between you. And because we're small, when you sponsor a girl, you actually get a real connection with that student. Videos get sent back and forth, and letters can be written back and forth. You get their report cards. You get to know them as a person, which is really important. And some people choose to be anonymous donators, and that's completely up to you. If you want to build a relationship with the girl, you can. And if you have an organization, if you're part of another organization that is doing good in the world, your organization could also sponsor a girl. We did that once with our youth interact group here in Whistler, where those high school students selected a high school student in Uganda that they wanted to sponsor. And those high school students raised the funds every year for her education until she completed university. So she was about 4 years old. So as they were going through high school, she was going through university. And it was beautiful. And it's interesting because the adult leaders of that group said to me several times, you have no idea what our kids are getting out of this. You think they're helping this girl in Africa. It's
Hmm.
actually helping our kids so much because they're learning life skills of teamwork and event planning and fundraising and marketing and advertising, etc. And
Hmm.
they're also learning about the world around them as they started to have insight into what Penina's life was like and how different it was to their own life. And that was really
Right.
powerful as well. And there's stories like that too in Half the Sky.
Yeah.
So there's many ways that people can get involved.
Hmm.
We do need funding. So that is the biggest always for any nonprofit.
Hmm.
And, like I said, if you're willing to give up a Tim Hortons or a Starbucks coffee or tea
Yeah.
a couple times a week, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. Every little bit adds up.
And it would have such an impact on someone else's life in another part of the world in a bigger way than, like you said, just, one less coffee, two less coffees a week. And I was just curious, like, as you've been sharing this amazing story of Girls Matter and how it started with bringing your daughters to go see that movie, I was just curious, like, how that movie and like your work with Girls Matter has impacted your daughters' lives as well.
So, what we have done or had done even before that in lieu of Christmas presents they would get to choose a gift that they would give to someone in a third world country.
Mm.
And so that's what we've continued to do is in lieu of a Christmas gift, their Christmas gift, they would choose who they want to donate that funds to or what project we're working on that they want to donate the funds to. So that's one way. And my older daughter isn't currently living in Canada. She's in Australia right now and she's traveling. And at some point, she works with kids anyway. And so at some point when she's back in Canada and closer to home where we can kind of work a little bit more side by side, I would love to bring her more into Girls Matter in some capacity where she can potentially work with the kids, the younger kids, and maybe it's not Girls Matter, maybe it's meaningful volunteer because she loves that younger age group to we need better internet connection first, but things are constantly improving to have her
Yeah.
be involved in working with those younger kids over Zoom if that's something that she would like to do. For now, I lead by example. They know what I'm doing, they see what I'm doing, and at some point it will come full circle because I know for me, I'm in this position because I saw all the volunteering that my parents did when I was a child. And
Right.
as a young child, I didn't necessarily appreciate it, but as a young adult, I could look back and see all the hours that they had given in order for me to be able to, be at the swim meets or the school carnivals, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I
Right.
became a Girl Guide leader in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And I feel like that speaks to the whole premise of Girls Gone Mad, just education, whether it's through experience with watching your parents volunteer or getting to be educated yourself. And like it just starts this new cycle instead of the cycle of going into having to not go to school and then passing that on to your children. Now you get to be a part of interrupting that and encouraging girls and helping them get to school so that when their daughters grow up, that system will be in place for them as well.
exactly. Exactly. And this year, what we've been able to do again through my networking locally is I met a woman who's actually living in Texas and she's from Nigeria originally and born and raised there. And then she had the opportunity to go to the US to go to university. And she is now actively mentoring our girls in Buyaya. And it's not something we can do all year because when they're away at school in boarding school, we don't have access to them. However, each holiday when they come home to the village, they are mentored by her, which is beautiful because they see in her the opportunities they want for themselves. And because she's been able to leave Nigeria and come to North America and make a better life for herself, she can inspire them to be able to step into their full potential to do the same.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's really beautiful just how connected this all is and giving back to communities where you came from. And yeah, it's truly, like I said, multiple times with goosebumps listening to this story and what Girls Matter has done, that it's pretty amazing that this started from this video you went to go see, had it niggled in the back for a little while, and then put it out there in the universe, and all these beautiful connections came out of it to be able to jump in and support these women across the world.
Yes, and what the listeners don't know, because I haven't talked much about Girls Matter on this podcast, if at all. However, what I have
Yeah.
been doing for the last year and a half, if not 2 years, is using this podcast as a fundraiser for Girls Matter, in that guests that come on the show are invited to donate to Girls Matter as part of coming on the show. And that's
Right.
been another beautiful way that we've been able to raise funds, particularly for our menstrual pad campaign, and keep that going for our girls. And the guests, male and female, really appreciate what we're doing and donate. And then there's been the odd person who's chosen, that's not for me. I don't want to pay to play. And that's fine. It's their option. However,
Mhm.
I just want the audience to know that you listening and rating and having this podcast in the top 2% of global podcasts has really helped elevate other people's desire to come on the show as a guest. And then that allows us to continue asking for donations as well. So thank you for listening. You're part of this as well. And if you'd like to be a bigger part of Girls Matter and what we're doing, you can check out our website at girlsmatter.ca. We are Canadian, so it's a .ca. And there's a donate tab there as well. And you can set up a one-time donation. You can set up a subscription donation where you just donate X amount every month so that you know that that's taken care of. And if you would like to sponsor a girl, then please reach out to me at info@girlsmatter.ca and let me know that you would like to learn more about that. And we can chat about what those different costs are. And we have a list of applicants, and we can certainly share some of those application forms with you so that you can choose the girl that you would like to sponsor. And thank you, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, it's again just so beautiful to see this and the ability for your listeners to be able to connect more with your networks and your ways of donating to Girls Matter. So again, that calls out there, go donate, go connect with Girls Matter. And just as I think we're probably getting close to wrapping up, I kind of want to flip this on Melissa, as she normally asks her guests at the end of every episode. What does "don't wait for your wake-up call" mean to you?
What that means to me is to take responsibility for your health now. You never know when that wake-up call might happen. However, if you take responsibility for your health now, if you educate yourself, we're back to education. If you build a network of healers and resources around you so that you have that in your time of need, then getting through any kind of health issue or health crisis becomes so much easier. If you wait until you're in that crisis, there's already stress going on. And it's really hard for you to then be able to get yourself educated in a calm way in which you could absorb all of the information when you're in this really highly stressed out state. And it's what I live, it's what I teach, and it's what I experienced earlier this year when I had my own health issue come up. And I don't remember what episode number that was. I think it was episode 151, maybe. No, that's not me. We'll put the link to it in the show notes. And it's actually episode 171. People can go back and listen to how I was able to navigate my health journey because I had educated myself. I had a network of people around me because I didn't want to wait for my wake-up call. I wanted to have the tools ready in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And what about you, Ashleigh? I've never asked you that before. What does wait for your wake-up call mean to you?
Oh, I mean, I'm taking a lot from actually what you've shared today about Girls Matter, about these things that, life can throw you a curveball of getting fired from a job or something like that. But if you keep a lot of that, what you find your passion to be in the back of your mind and you don't do something about it and just let it sit there, it doesn't bring fulfillment. So for me, don't wait for your wake-up call means if you have that little niggling in the back of your mind to do something or make a change or support a group that you wouldn't have a connection to, but just put it out there to see what connections will come for you. And yeah, just don't be afraid to take that first step forward into that little calling that you've felt in the back of your mind for a while.
I love that. That's a beautiful answer. And yes, absolutely resonates with the message of this episode today.
Mhm.
So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for being here and doing this with me. This has been really fun.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to work on your podcast. I learned so much from it. I share it with anyone and everyone that I can on all these little nuggets of knowledge you give out. So here's to another 200 episodes.
Thank you so much, Ashleigh. And I also want to thank my audience. Thank you for being here. Without you, this wouldn't be nearly as much fun. And I really appreciate all of your support, tuning in each and every week, checking out the health hacks in between. I hear some people binging on them. I love that. And if this episode resonates with you today and you know others that would like to hear it or get involved or support Girls Matter, please share it with them. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I'd like to introduce you to Girls Matter today. It is a nonprofit that I started back in 2017 to help ensure girls in developing countries get an education. You see, education is not free all the way around the world, and it very often comes down to families having to choose between paying for their daughter's education or feeding them. And sometimes they can't even afford to feed them. They will marry them off as teenagers and they become someone else's problem. At Girls Matter, we fundraise to keep girls in school, pay for their high school education, ensure they have the menstrual supplies they need so they don't miss a week of school every single month. Because we know that in keeping girls in school, we are breaking the poverty cycle one girl, one family, one village at a time. When we educate the girls, we actually can grow the GDP of the country. When we educate the girls, we're also having a powerful ripple effect because an educated girl is more than twice as likely to educate her own children. So if this is something that resonates with you and you would like to give back as you listen to my podcast and learn for yourself, and you would like to help other girls learn and improve their education, please go to girlsmatter.ca and donate. You can do one-time donations, subscription donations, whatever feels right for you. As you enjoy the content I provide to you, please choose to give back and support girls in improving their life elsewhere around the world. And for that, I thank you.